just your standard question when people are thinking about financial planning is, I don't want to do this forever. I don't want to work forever. When can I retire? How much am I going to have when I retire? Yep. What's retirement going to look like? Well, sometimes we'll reverse that back on them and say, I don't know, what do you want retirement to look like?
So, Nick and Pete.
Nick and Pete.
From the Lewis Group.
We're both Lewises.
Both Lewises, yes. Talking about how we wanted to add a little bit more substance to our newsletter, so we thought we'd produce a couple different podcast format videos to add to that, and our website, and just talk about some of the different questions that we get asked most often by our clients. So, kind of wanted to do that, but before we start that, short introduction, of course. Peter Lewis, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm sure nobody knows who you are.
I think you just did. My name's Peter Lewis. We've had the Lewis Group here for 37 years. I'm a chartered financial consultant. Work with a lot of people, businesses, professionals. Really enjoy expanding our opportunity to help people in San Antonio for, like I said, 37 years.
Yeah, it's been a little while now.
Yeah.
I'm Nicholas Lewis. I'm Peter's favorite son. He only
son.
Yeah, he only has one, so that's pretty good. Been doing this about 4 years now, but of course worked in and around the office since I was about 18 months old. So it's been awesome so far. I've got to work with some of his clients, start to build my own book of business, but helping San Antonio grow and Texas in general has been an awesome thing, and I'm looking forward to doing more.
So what are some of the questions your clients ask you when you sit down with them? What's the most important things they say they're concerned with?
I mean, that's kind of a hard thing because it's so broad, right? And my clientele is a little bit different than his, obviously, a little bit younger, starting out in their different careers. So some of the stuff that I often most get asked is like, the basic stuff, right? What's the difference between a Roth and a traditional 401k? Should I be contributing more to the Roth, more to the traditional 401k? Stuff like that. And what is a brokerage account? What's a mutual fund? Just the very basic stuff, all the way up to, I want to retire at exactly 59 and a half in one day. So how can I get from here to there in the next 20, 30 years? So going through stuff like that, it's obviously very specific to every different situation. I know that's a hard answer that we always give is it depends. We say that probably 100 times a day, but it really does. So going that kind of stuff is pretty important. I know this is a very generic question, but I know we get asked this a lot when we just are at a bar or a party or whatever. And
bar? I don't go to bars.
Anyways, when we're talking to people in general and we tell them we're financial advisors, they say, well, where should I invest? Mm-hmm. What answer do you like to give?
Well, it depends on what the goal is, what you're trying to achieve as to where you should invest. Is it for retirement, which is, of course, just your standard question when people are thinking about financial planning is, I don't want to do this forever. I don't want to work forever. When can I retire? How much am I going to have when I retire? What's retirement going to look like? Well, sometimes we'll reverse that back on them and say, I don't know, what do you want retirement to look like, right? That kind of makes them pause a little bit and think about it. But where should you invest is relative to what the goal is. So it might not be retirement. It might be saving up for a house.
Yep.
Or saving up for a second home, or educating your kids. So there's different buckets that can be created depending on the goal you're trying to achieve, and then each of those buckets could have different tax treatment. So we have to talk through those things as well. Anything the IRS gives you, they could take away. So you got to be careful with any of those kinds of issues as well, right? And with the retirement question, one of the immediate responses is, I don't know, how much do you spend? How much are you going to need? And that usually creates a little silence for a while because people don't necessarily have a good grasp on that. One of our colleagues this morning, we said, the dirty word is you got to do a budget for us. Nobody likes to hear the word budget. So he said, how about a spending plan? Yeah. Instead of a budget, we'll call it a spending plan.
Everyone likes to talk about how they're going to spend their money. Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah. But talking about how they're not going to spend their money, not as exciting.
Not as exciting.
It's the same thing, just different perspectives.
Yeah. Exactly. So. And as you mentioned, I mean, the clients that you're working with that are your peers are in a different position than the clients that we have now. My clients were in the same spot yours are now, and we've worked with them through those 37 years, for instance, and now it's not as much, what do I got to do to get there? They're there.
Yep.
Hopefully they're prepared because they worked with us all these years. And now it is, how do you distribute all those assets that you've created and that Uncle Sam hopefully won't take too much of as you're doing that. So that's a big deal, a real big deal right now.
Yep.
And there's certain answers to that and great plans around it, but it takes starting more than a couple of years before you're ready to call it quits.
Which kind of leads me to my next question, because this is one I hear a lot when I'm sitting down with my dad. Sometimes he'll bring me into meetings and I'm able to hear those higher level discussions. One of the big ones that I've heard a lot is, can I retire? And we're like, I don't know. Can you?
It goes back to the old, what's your spending plan?
Yeah.
And what have you done to prepare for it? And that's, you can't start any of that too soon. What retirement means to you is going to change over the years, but you got to start keeping that in the forefront of your mind. But there's a lot of things that are going to come up in between there. For instance, again, kids' college. If you have kids, if you want to help educate them, what's it going to take? What's it going to cost? Where's the money coming from? How much do you want to fund? How much are the kids going to pay for? Scholarships, grants, all that kind of stuff. One of the popular sayings in our industry is, you can borrow money for college, you can't borrow money to retire.
Yeah.
So if you have to, maybe it's not bad for the kids to have a little skin in the game and have to fund some of their own expenses, and that may include borrowing. A lot of people do it if it's for the right reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess this kind of ties to that one, but a lot of people also ask, when do I need a financial plan? And of course, I would say you always need a financial plan, right? But in terms of like really going in depth with someone like us and really building out a plan like that, looks a little bit different for everybody, right? So what do you think? What is your perspective on, like, when would I come to you and say, hey, I have all this going on, and you tell me I need a financial plan? What do you think that looks like?
Well, a financial plan can be as simple as going back to that word budgeting again and saying, all right, what am I making? What am I spending on my fixed costs? What am I spending on my fund costs? And how much of that money can I start saving toward a plan? That right there is planning. It doesn't have to be this real extravagant taxes and retirement and college and investing. I mean, it's just getting right down to basics and figuring those things out and then developing a strategy from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I always like to say, and kind of a tacky old saying, but I don't like to call it a financial plan. I like to call it financial planning because it's always evolving with the person, right? Life changes, marriages, weddings, house purchases, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's
Sounds
always
like
changing.
You've been doing this for a while. You're real experienced.
I have a semi-okay mentor.
Okay.
But, as we go through that stuff, it's planning. It's not a plan. It's not set in stone. So it's always evolving. And then the big one that I probably have heard this one more than any of these in the last month, especially with your clients, right? And it's, when should I take Social Security, right? And the answer my dad likes to give is...
Depends on how long you plan on being on the earth. There's another way of saying that, but it's, okay, when do you plan on dying?
Yeah.
Then I can give you a concrete answer. But short of that, we can do a pretty formal analysis of not just the age relative to when you can max out the most money over a period of years, because you don't know how long you're going to live and how long it takes to break even if you start at 63 instead of 67 or 68 years of age or 70 years of age. It's more like, what is the impact of not doing it on the portfolio that you currently have and the tax situation of having to take distributions from an IRA. Sure, you want to delay Social Security as long as possible, and the longest to delay it is age 70 without getting too technical, and still get raises from the IRS. But there's a lot of moving parts within that, and you need to be fully it needs to be fully explained to you. You have all the details and make an educated decision, as educated as you can get.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It's a big deal. Your Social Security assets are a big asset.
Yeah.
You present value, the potential payout on a Social Security check over the years, it's a big number. So you do have to take your time and analyze that.
Yeah. Well, and that's just a couple of we talked to a couple of different guys in our office and just kind of collected these couple questions. But of course, there's always more. So if you have any interest in us answering any more questions that y'all have had, please email back to our newsletter, and we'll get some of those collected and then kind of go through those. But yeah, I think that's a good place to stop for today. I don't know.
I think you left
Yeah,
one
but
question unanswered. Is it better to do a Roth or a pre-tax 401k?
Well, it depends.
That's the end
Right.
of that.
Yeah, it depends.
It depends.